I guess when I see that, go to all blue.
I can sit here.
Of course you
Yeah,
can.
you can.
Sit in where you want. Except on me.
I was thinking not on my lap, but
Well, that's two different value propositions.
Meeting is now streaming. live.
Okay, I think you're good.
All right, let's call a meeting to order.
Okay.
I pledge
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, do we have any agenda updates?
I think so.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about temporary bridge.
Can we, before we start,
Yes,
can I, on the temporary bridge thing,
well, yeah,
I made these for everybody. And as we go through, Joel, I know you're gonna walk us through a number of things. It's a risk assessment and a risk, basically management chart matrix with a bunch of questions that I think as we go through it, you can fill it in by yourself. I'm not trying to sit here and train you and all that. But I think it'll help us to make a decision in terms of what we do or what we not do in terms of this bridge, temporary bridge. Do we build a culvert, et cetera, et cetera? And in simple terms, you have your chart in the upper right. Sorry, camera guys, Mike, I see you up there, but in the upper right, basically what you have is the consequence, which is extreme, major, modest, or minor, and then you have a probability of that particular thing happening, okay?
Mhm.
And in my mind, there's three things that can go wrong, and I filled it in for us. Budget, the loss of life, and further degradation. I think those three things are probably the things that we want to at least consider tonight for this particular bridge, whether it's short-term or long-term. And as we talk about it, maybe just fill it in. I've already kind of filled mine in. I know which way I think I want to go based on what I've looked at. But there's also things that we can do to like mitigate the risk.
sure.
And you guys have been here a longer time than I have, and there's a whole bunch of expertise in here that I think can really add to the conversation in terms of where we go. Instead of making a $200,000 decision, maybe we don't, or maybe we do, but we know what the risks are ahead of time. So I just printed out for you guys. And now I'll turn it back to the chair.
Okay, so at the last meeting, I guess, the big concern was the emergency services. But come to find out, Charleston, is the primary responder for that side of the bridge, whatever, and, the Newport ambulance as well. And, Rick, that Charleston responded, Brighton is the secondary resource mutually. So I know when we voted for this bridge, it was because of the emergency services, but now we have new information, so that's why we're here let's go over this and see what.
Yep.
At least for me, that was a huge impact is
That was my-
emergency services.
yeah.
When I find out that they come in from the other side already.
Yeah.
It makes me say, stop, pump the brakes, hold on.
Yeah.
Let's look at a number of factors and see what's going on, because we are talking about 30 to 40,000, put it in and take it out. Like,
What do you mean they come
Together.
from the other side already?
that area is covered by Charleston for fire, and that area is,
And rescue.
the rescue comes in from Charleston side.
That was never in question, I don't think.
Well,
What I
don't
heard,
think we
No.
had that information
Right.
when we,
Well, we were,
Voted.
at least this is what I was, that our rescue, like fire trucks, would not be able to get there in time, or the.
Yeah,
Because
yes. yeah.
That was what I heard. That was
what
what I heard.
That's
Yeah.
what I heard.
There was two things, right?
The-
One was the fire
And
and
then-
the other was the ambulance.
That's
Right.
And I think both of those are different things. So I read Noah's email that kind of put out a little bit of the
Yep,
stuff
this
on
is,
this.
yep,
But it's not the Newport ambulance that is going to respond. It's going to be the Morgan. Our response comes from Morgan, which is on the 111 side automatically. It's not going to be
Correct.
on the 105 side.
Right.
So we need to, that to me doesn't necessarily mitigate, what his email doesn't necessarily tell me that we're mitigating a risk of loss of life for the ambulance unless he's gonna go all the way around or he cuts across by Echo and goes the other way.
That's what they said.
But that still is gonna add time, right? In my mind, you're not on hard pack road, asphalt and, yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I talked with Jeff over the weekend because he was at the marathon, and he assured me that the difference in time is not enough that it would make a real difference. The dispatch knows exactly which addresses they have to hit from each direction. I mean, they cover Charleston too, so it's not like they're unfamiliar with that. They're already, if they're responding to the other side of that bridge, it's already Charleston. So it doesn't really. He said it really it's a minor impact to them, but they're fine with the bridge the way without the bridge. It doesn't matter. Don't do it based on them.
That's the Charleston side. What about this side of the bridge covered by Norton? Or is that who you
Right,
talked to?
right.
No, it's Brighton.
That's who. I mean,
Same
we're
place, same
covered
thing.
by Newport Ambulance, and yes, they are based in Morgan, but it just depends when they leave the station which direction they go to get to a house, and dispatch tells them which way to go. So he said that the time difference is minor.
You say Morgan or Norton?
Morgan is where
Okay,
our
I'm sorry.
ambulance comes
I'm
from.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so, Mike, when you talked to him, was there a time difference? I mean, or did he just say
He said it's
but to
negligible.
me-
He said it's a minute or two. It's not drastic. It's not like it's an extra 20 minutes or something. He said it's a minute or two. He said it's not really impactful.
Okay, so that's the ambulance, right? So.
Correct.
Now, the fire truck, my understanding is, based on the email I saw, Charleston
Has its own.
has its own, we have our own.
Mhm.
But what he said was, if Charleston is the primary responder, then Brighton is gonna be the secondary.
For
But that's
Charleston,
not always true.
well, for Charleston,
Oh,
And they
Okay.
provide service to the,
and then if Brighton needs,
Yep.
then Charleston, they're secondary.
correct.
I'm assuming, right?
Well,
Right, and
So Brighton is,
what was in question was the fact that like anybody on Calhoun Road or on this half of the 10 Mile Square Road, Charleston responds to them, right? On other side of the bridge.
that's right.
So if Brighton has to be called in for mutual aid, then they have to go all the way around instead of going directly to Calhoun Road. So that adds a lot of time, right? So that was what I was saying before. And then the same holds true for the other part of that. The Brighton Fire Department, especially during the week when everybody's at work, 9 to 10 times has 2 to 3 guys that respond. So I'm pretty sure you can check Rick's stats, but I'm pretty sure that 95% of the time he calls in for mutual aid if it's a structure fire or something to that effect, right? So if say Micaiah Maxwell, anything at the Robbins Roost, the guy that lives out through Maxwell's Pit, Jesse Nash, Jess Sykes, or any of the Sykes on that side right there, if they have a structure fire, God forbid, or anything else, or like I said, someone's trapped underneath a tractor out on the far end of Calhoun Road or something, right? And they need help. It's going to take that much longer for either Charleston to go all the way around and get there or Brighton to go all the way around and get there, right?
and that's your secondary response. So you've already
That's
got your
right.
primary on ground.
That's right.
Right. So if your primary is on ground, you have 2 guys and it's going to take 7 guys to do what you got to do. And you have to call for mutual aid. You have 2 guys standing there doing the best they absolutely can and struggling, right?
And I
And
understand that.
it's a that much longer of a struggle that they're sitting there while they're waiting for mutual aid. So yes, primary is on ground, secondary mutual aid is what's gonna be delayed.
yeah.
Okay. So, on that, just loss of life, I look at it as, loss of life is extreme. That's, you don't want to jack with that, right? That's the consequence. But the probability of the loss of life is, unlikely to likely. So
Fairly
Somewhere
minimal.
it's in the middle. But the risk is up there in terms of,
Mhm.
loss of life.
Sure.
Okay, all right. So we're all same sheet there.
So we're saying based on the chart, and the decision maker for loss of life, you put a tick mark on upper left
I would,
in
Yeah,
very unlikely.
I won't
Yeah,
say,
I would say very unlikely. I mean, how,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, right, look at the percentage of the whole Brighton as a whole.
yeah,
And we look at how many calls we have and how many emergencies we have as Brighton as a whole.
Mhm.
To narrow it down to, I don't know what the percentage of the land is there, but I'm sure we could go and pull and calculate it. It's a small portion of our physical
But
tap.
if you take Brighton as a whole, that's skewing the outcome. If you take the percentage of that area right there and figure out how many little kids there are, and then to figure out how many little kids get into accidents on a daily basis, right? And as a whole, or elderly people, right? And most people on that side are elderly.
Most people on
side
that
have
side,
little kids.
most people on that side are not Brighton residents.
No, I
You have
understand
to
that.
take that into consideration.
that's right.
If Charleston was here at the table with us discussing what they want to pay for that bridge, then I'll take Charleston into consideration.
yeah. And maybe that's an option, you know, when we look at mitigating risk for budget, you know, that might be something to look at. But yeah, I think, you know, loss of life is something, you know, in combat, it's the same thing. You know, you go in with a plan and you assume that because you have everything that you're gonna do to take care of life, that you won't lose a life. But it's that one time that it happens that you have to be sure
Mhm.
that you have the mitigating risk on the other side. So based on that conversation, are we pretty comfortable with the ambulance and the fire department mitigating risk based on our conversation? That's kind of what sticks out in my mind. And you can put it wherever you want on your chart, but I think,
So to me, they both said it wasn't something that they would be impacted by. They were comfortable with the bridge not being
They being.
ambulance and
And
fire
fire.
department.
and does that include wintertime conditions?
Mhm.
Because that's gonna be something to look at. Okay, right.
Okay, so.
The other one, Gene, I put is budget. I think that's something we need to look at. Obviously, there's a lot of money here that's at stake. It's a lot of money, considerations for the tax increases that we're gonna go through. It's a lot of money, you know, but there are mitigating risks. We just need to understand fully what that is. And
That's what I'm thinking, the taxes, I think.
And say
Yeah, did we have-
7,500 a month
Didn't,
for the bridge is 98,000 a year.
did we have a,
Yeah.
estimate on what the tax would be on a
90.
$100,000 home? I think it's like
Oh, no.
100
On a $200,000 home, assuming the bridge is gonna cost $220,000, which is, I guess, 2 years. The increase on a $200,000 home would be $380. That's assuming it's all done in 1 year. We would
Right.
spread this
So
out
it'd be
over years, but
160 a
the
year,
fact,
2
the
years.
fact of the matter is, it would
Yeah.
still be $380 or more.
and
total.
then,
For
and
a
then with the state,
temporary project.
15% increase next year?
well, temporary initially, right? But the long-term result is,
Right, but this is
bridge.
all going to the temp bridge.
That, you're right,
The
there's,
we haven't even calculated in what the permanent bridge would cost.
correct. I saw his email and the way he wrote it was worst case scenario. In other words, if you have courses of actions, you always present least likely, most likely.
Right.
You know, to me, that's the least likely because work gets done, people get after it. You know, 2 years is $220,000. 1 year is probably
One is 90 plus 30, so that's 120.
120. Okay, so to me, that's a little bit more.
So it would be half of that amount.
but I think,
Yeah, that's right.
what did they say about having the, bridge put in is at least 2 years before that can be done? Is that
Based on
the-
our experience, I would say a minimum of 2 years. I mean, dealing with, because this has got to go through the state, you know, this is going to require engineering and permitting and all that other stuff, which as you can tell from wastewater treatment plants and water treatment plants does not happen overnight. And this bridge is not considered a necessity.
If it
You know,
was a
people aren't
necessity,
cut off
they
from their
would already-
homes. So we'll be at the bottom of that list of who's going to get approved. You know, Lindenville and St. Johnsbury have people cut off from their homes by those bridges. So does Morgan. Those will take priority when it comes to engineering and permitting. So we're going to be at the bottom of that list. So I would say a minimum 2 years, if not longer.
You know, the
If you-
primary,
Yeah.
If you get a temporary bridge, there's one thing to consider. Make sure you get insurance on that bridge, because if there's another storm like the one we had, that bridge is gonna be down on my property.
Mhm.
I mean, what? I get it, the state doesn't have their cheap bridge. But what's to say we wait until a cheap bridge becomes available?
They won't give
one-
us the cheap bridge because it's not necessity. It's not a
Because we have-
necessary bridge. It's convenience. It's not necessity. There's
I
they
thought-
they
I
they
thought
have
when
a
we
they have a
talked-
real
I thought when we talked last week, there was a possibility that we could get the state bridge.
No. They said no.
Never, ever.
No, they didn't say never ever. They said keep asking.
Right.
We can keep asking, but the chances are very slim because their reasoning that we're not getting it is nobody is cut off. We are not this bridge is for necessity. That road is convenience. It's a convenience for people to get between Brighton and Charleston. It's not a necessary bridge. So they're going to put it wherever it is necessary.
I think the deciding factor by the state is you can get anywhere on 10 Mile Square Road through 2 routes.
Mhm.
Correct.
And because there were alternate routes to get to that point is the reason why we wouldn't qualify for the less expensive bridge.
Correct.
Yes, that's the determining factor at this time because they're down to their personal stock supply.
Yeah.
He said if all the bridges in this state were fixed and they had all their supply of bridges, it wouldn't be a problem to give us.
So how are we gonna go about, would it be feasible to go see property owners over there and explain to them, how long can you go without this temporary bridge? And rush the permanent bridge?
Well, that's a matter of, that's strictly a matter of opinion because, you know, them culverts that we replaced over on the head of the pond, Lakeshore Drive, right? They've had dirt over them for the past 3 months. And everybody on Lakeshore Drive really wants them things tarred, right? But nobody on the 10 Mile Square Road gives a crap about those culverts. This is the exact same situation. Everybody on the 10 Mile Square Road wants that bridge, but nobody around the lake.
What I'm trying to say is if we actually could reach out to people, say, look, if this is what you guys really need or want, this is what's just gonna happen to your tax rate.
But if you're,
Well, we gotta
but it
figure out
goes to
something.
everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
there is the possibility that we don't do anything now. And you
Maybe,
put it as an article for the warning in March and let the town vote on it.
Okay, before we say we don't do anything now, can we talk about other options?
Yeah,
Different options
Yeah,
instead of.
Yeah, I was gonna
bridge?
say, I mean,
Yeah,
like,
sure.
what are the other options?
yeah.
So I can reach out. I know Ben Matthews told me when I had my meeting with him, and I have it in writing in an email, that he will approve any temporary measure we decide. Okay,
Who
so
is Ben Matthews?
Ben Matthews is the stream alteration engineer for the state. He works for the Department of Environmental Conservation. So, who's to say we don't find a way to cut that bridge out of there and crane it out and get that hole cleaned up and then put a big culvert in for now, like Mike suggested last Wednesday. That's probably a $50,000 option opposed to 200,000.
Now,
I thought
I thought we couldn't do a culvert.
right, because,
It's temporary.
yeah,
If it's sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's the abutments, but he said if you do the cement, if you cut the cement out, in other words, we know we're gonna get to a long-term solution with some sort of
Right.
bridge in the long term. Short term, you can put in a culvert, but it's only short term. And if we get another big storm, I mean, we're gonna have to reinforce pretty hard on, and I'm not an engineer,
you're
but
right, yeah.
it sounds to me like as a short-term solution, that might be better in terms of at least providing road access
So the
versus,
culvert goes into the river and you put a
Yeah,
new,
but can you put anything in the river without the state coming in and say,
That's where
yeah?
Ben
And
Matthews said
Matt
he would
comes
do it.
in,
Oh,
right?
that's him?
So you'd
Okay.
put the culvert in the ground and lift that current slab over the top of it and
Just fill it with
put
gravel.
something?
No, not even close. We get concrete cutters in there, cut that out and into manageable sized pieces. And then crane them out and get rid of it. And then put the culvert in and backfill. Same thing that they did over here on
So you're
105 by 8th and Allen.
Yep.
Those two culverts are temporary, while the state has a box culvert engineered for that.
Right, so you put the little round culvert in the river and you just make a dirt mound over the top of it.
Same as every other
So you
culvert.
can
Yep,
drive over the top of it.
that's right.
It's just a really big culvert.
That's right. The state, not the state, sorry. Just downstream, right by the beginning of Joel's Road, they just did a 10-foot culvert there, 10-foot squash culvert there last year. Jason LaFave did.
And
Is there a header on that, Andy?
I believe so. It's right at the end of your road. You take a left and it's right there. The
Yeah.
guardrail's right there now.
is this
Right.
one that we have the staffing here to do, or we need obviously we can bring in other people, right?
Well, we're gonna have to have the engineers, yeah.
And engineers.
Well, as far as that goes, I mean, if we get Ben Matthews approval for a big culvert, then we can either bid it out or we can do it ourselves. I mean, it's a huge culvert. It's a great undertaking, and we really do have undersized equipment for something like that.
Maybe.
I think it would be one of those things that we'd have to see see the numbers. It's good, worth looking into.
Oh, for sure.
That is definitely worth looking into.
Yeah.
Get the numbers.
As a short-term solution.
And that's still temporary and we still continue to work on the
But I mean,
permit.
I'm gonna
it's,
point out the obvious. We own that culvert outright. We're not renting it. We're not re-upping it.
Right,
If it takes the state 5 years, it
That's
only
right.
costs one time.
right.
that's right,
Right.
right. So, exactly. So, I mean, it's-
So
And then that just goes into the scope of work for whoever gets the bid for the permanent structure. That just gets put into the scope of work for them to remove that culvert, right, and start fresh.
Would there be a time limit on that, Tim?
That's up to the state.
Will it require concrete work at the abutments?
Depends on the state. Ben could say you're good with, 1 foot riprap all the way around it just to reinforce it. Or he might say, hey, listen, we want a concrete wall for a header on that. It depends on what he says.
so can you get us some more concrete prices and then we can,
I can get
this sounds really a lot better than,
that sounds like a lot better option
Yeah.
than the rental bridge.
yeah.
yeah, I mean, what the first thing I'll do is talk to Ben and see what he thinks about that idea.
Mhm.
And then from there, he will basically go back to work and give me a layout of everything he requires of us to do that job. And then I'll present it to you and tell you what we got in store.
I think
that's
it's a
It'll
great
have-
idea, because like you said, we own the culvert. If the state takes 3 years before we can have a bridge, we still got that.
And then if we need the culvert for another big spot, we have a culvert,
Yeah.
or we sell it.
It would be metal culvert.
Yeah, something that size would, so ideally what the state, I can tell you right now, what they're gonna recommend is gonna be a squash culvert.
Oh, yeah.
So,
What is this squash culvert?
so they basically take a round culvert and squash it down so it's got a flat bottom. So it bows the sides out. So a 12-foot squash culvert might be, 14 feet wide and 10 feet tall.
I see. Okay.
Looks like squash.
It looks like they did this.
Right.
Okay. And then we'll have to get at least 3 bids to actually do the temporary work.
Yeah, so, depend.
Unless they can do it.
Well, yeah, so it's gonna depend on what size he says. If he tells me that a 10 or 12-foot culvert is doable right there, then I'll figure out if it's something that's manageable for us, with the equipment that we have.
I don't think
If not,
they got the reach.
yeah, if it's not, then we'll do everything that we have to do. So typically, when you do work like that, if say for instance, Jason LaFave comes in with the best bid, right, and we go with him. He's the one that sets up the Mike Green for the concrete. We don't bid out the concrete separately. We just bid out the job. And
Right.
whoever gets that gets
Right.
everybody else lined up.
It's all inclusive.
It's not, the bills aren't inclusive. It's all gonna be separate
No,
bills.
no. But
Right,
one bill, but it's all inclusive for the work that needs to be done.
right.
Does that include the engineering specs?
So that, Ben Matthews is, free, right?
Mhm.
So he's the river management or river. Yep, engineer, alteration, there we go, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
That's the first time.
All right.
I've filmed.
I know,
River dude.
yeah,
Hey, Andy,
yeah,
just be aware that in springtime, that brook runs really, really high when the snow melt comes in.
right,
It's,
and that's why
it
Ben
washes away
Matthews,
things.
right, and that's why Ben Matthews needs to be involved, because he'll do a complete H&H. And, you know, he'll go upstream, take all the measurements he needs to take for the riverbank, and then for the, what is usually washed on the sides of that, and he'll put all the numbers together and do the math, and that's why he needs to tell me what size culvert needs to go in. That's why we're not just gonna throw a 12-foot culvert in. Because
Okay.
his
Bunch of
hydraulic study
culverts.
will, yeah, his hydraulic study will, he'll do a 50-year flood plan for it and go from there.
Yeah, my only concern is that they did a hydraulic study for the Meadow Street culverts, but it was inadequate. So sometimes I think you just ought to multiply whatever they say by 1.5 times.
Yeah, well, I mean, for what it's worth, that was a long time ago, and I'd like to think that they've come a little ways and educated.
Hydrology study has come a
Let's cross
long,
our
long
fingers.
ways
Yeah,
since then. Yeah.
for sure.
Okay,
The only, not to make this longer, but the only thing I would say and add, and we don't have to have a discussion now, is we still don't have a hired extra person to work the road crew stuff. So whatever work they have to do,
Mhm.
it's only two folks.
Well, by then, this isn't happening in the next 3 weeks, so,
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Right? On the hiring that it will happen.
no,
next
I'm
week.
talking this project.
No, this is true.
Right.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed that we actually hire somebody.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
in the Next
Yeah.
weeks.
Well, even if we hire someone in the next 3 weeks, there's still
Yeah, this
Two
is still a learning
4
curve.
weeks before they are done, you know, they give their notice and all that, so
Yeah,
we're 6 weeks before we get somebody.
well, and this could be a few months.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty good about rattling cages, so I don't mind pushing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
yeah. So, all right, so I think that's
So
a good
at
idea.
this point,
And the motion we did was to pursue the,
yeah, so we have to
Temporary
stop
bridge.
that, right?
Yep.
So
oh, because it said bridge.
Right, well, you gotta keep in mind, yeah, the temporary bridge was, the idea of that was formed, so that way we wouldn't have to close that road down again.
Mhm.
With the culvert,
so
we gotta shut it
we
down.
need a motion to discontinue that.
Yes.
Isn't discontinue negative?
Yeah,
That's
I think so,
Motion
but
that we, do you?
I'll make a motion
Yeah.
to rescind the temporary bridge motion from the prior meeting.
I second.
okay.
All in favor?
I'll understand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And then we make a motion
Motion.
to pursue.
You don't, I don't think
No.
you need to make a
No.
motion.
No.
for
Yeah,
for
you
this.
don't
You
need to
only-
make a
You guys
motion.
only control
Just
money,
getting
so you
Go
need to
get
make a
some
motion when you're
numbers.
spending something. Right now, you're not spending
Okay,
anything.
Right, we're just getting it.
The minutes should just reflect that the board agreed that Andy would pursue another option.
And then I will, is
and
anything
report
else?
No, was no.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, you can stop recording and we're good.
Good job.
You got that, Mike?
See if I can figure out how to do that.
If not, I've got it over here.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks.
I can do it.
Anyone know if the trash stickers came in yet?
I have some at the store. I have those are the small ones. No, I got the big one.